The summer of 1935 was supposed to be a season of cautious hope for Cleveland. The Great Depression still cast a long shadow, its economic grip slowly loosening, but the city, like the nation, was slowly, painfully, finding its footing again. A fragile optimism began to bloom in the hearts of its citizens. People were looking forward, dreaming of a brighter future, of stability, of simple pleasures, of a return to some semblance of normalcy. The industrial gears of the city were beginning to turn once more, and a sense of quiet resilience permeated the air. But beneath that fragile veneer of everyday life, a darkness was stirring, a shadow that would soon engulf the city in a nightmare unlike anything it had ever known, a horror that would etch itself into the very fabric of Cleveland's history. Imagine a city bustling with life, its streets filled with the sounds of commerce and conversation, yet holding its breath. Imagine the ordinary folks, the factory workers toiling in the steel mills, the shopkeepers tending to their small businesses, the families trying desperately to make ends meet, going about their days largely unaware that a monster walked among them. This phantom of flesh and blood was as elusive as smoke, yet as terrifyingly real as the fear it would soon sow. It began subtly, almost innocently, on September 23, 1935. The day was warm, typical of late summer. Two teenage boys, perhaps seeking adventure or simply a quiet place to play, ventured near Jackass Hill in the Kingsbury Run area. Kingsbury Run was a sprawling, desolate ravine, a winding scar of land that snaked through the city's industrial heartland. It was a place of forgotten corners, overgrown brush, and makeshift shanties, a refuge for the city's most vulnerable. It was here, amidst the tall grass and discarded debris, that the boys stumbled upon something horrifying. A headless, limbless torso, bleached and leathery from the sun, lay discarded. It was the body of a man, but it was more than just a body. It was a grotesque puzzle, a macabre statement left for the world to find. The Cleveland police, accustomed to the grim realities of a tough industrial city, to the occasional gangland hit or drunken brawl gone wrong, were still utterly unprepared for this. This was different. This was something new, something chillingly precise. The initial shock gave way to a chilling realization when just a few months later, on January 26, 1936, another body was found. This time, it was a woman, discovered in the same desolate Kingsbury Run area. And again, the same horrifying signature, decapitated, dismembered with an almost surgical precision, the skin often chemically treated to remove identifying marks. The bodies drained of blood with an unnerving thoroughness. The victims were often unidentifiable, their faces and fingerprints gone, their very identities erased, as if the killer sought not just to end a life, but to obliterate any trace of who they once were. This was not merely murder. It was an act of profound dehumanization. Fear, cold and insidious, began to creep into the heart of Cleveland. Kingsbury Run, once a place of quiet desperation, became a place of utter dread. It had been a haven for the homeless, the drifters, the forgotten souls of the Depression era, those living on the fringes of society. Now it was unequivocally a hunting ground. The local newspapers, initially cautious in their reporting, soon exploded with sensational headlines screaming about the torso murderer, the mad butcher of Kingsbury Run. The public devoured every gruesome detail, a morbid fascination mixed with a growing terror. The city's collective breath hitched with each new discovery. One body after another, each more gruesome than the last, each a testament to the killer's chilling methodology. The victims were often found in different parts of the city, sometimes in plain sight, a macabre display for all to see, sometimes hidden in the shadows, only to be discovered by chance. A man's torso washed up on the muddy shore of Lake Erie. A woman's dismembered remains found meticulously placed in a basket. The killer seemed to taunt the authorities, leaving behind just enough to horrify, to send a clear message of his presence, but never enough to identify him, never enough to provide a solid lead. It was a game of cat and mouse, with the entire city as the unwitting prey. Imagine the mothers pulling their children closer, their grip tight, their eyes scanning the streets with a newfound suspicion. Imagine the fathers double-checking their locks at night, listening intently to every creak and groan of their old houses. Imagine the whispers on the streetcars, the hushed conversations in grocery stores, the suspicious glances exchanged between strangers. Who was safe? If the killer could strike anyone, anywhere, with such brutal anonymity, what hope was there for ordinary citizens? The city, once vibrant and resilient, felt a growing sense of vulnerability, a chilling awareness of the darkness that could lurk just beyond the comforting glow of the gaslights, waiting to snatch another soul. The police were desperate. They worked tirelessly, round the clock, following every lead, no matter how flimsy, chasing shadows in the labyrinthine streets of Cleveland. But the killer was a ghost. There were no witnesses who could offer a clear description. No obvious motives that made sense. No traditional forensic evidence beyond the horrific state of the bodies themselves. Fingerprinting was still in its infancy, a nascent science, and DNA analysis was decades away, a concept beyond the wildest dreams of 1930s law enforcement. They were fighting a phantom with blunt instruments, their methods inadequate against such a cunning and elusive adversary. Into this maelstrom of fear and frustration stepped Eliot Ness, the legendary untouchable, fresh from his triumphs against Al Capone and the organized crime syndicates of Chicago, had been appointed Cleveland's Director of Public Safety in 1935. He was a man of action, a symbol of unwavering law and order, and the city looked to him for salvation, for the decisive blow that would end the terror. Ness threw himself into the investigation with his characteristic relentless determination. He ordered massive raids on the hobo camps and shantytowns that dotted Kingsbury Run, rounding up hundreds of vagrants, hoping to flush out the killer from his presumed lair. He brought in top medical examiners, forensic experts, and seasoned detectives from across the country, assembling a formidable team. He was a force, a beacon of hope, but even Ness, with all his experience, his resources, and his legendary tenacity, found himself up against an enemy unlike any he had ever faced. The killer seemed to mock his efforts, continuing his gruesome work, even as Ness intensified the hunt. The killer seemed to possess an almost surgical skill, a chilling knowledge of human anatomy. The precision of the dismemberments, the complete absence of blood at the scenes where the bodies were found, suggested someone with medical training, or at the very least, a deep and disturbing understanding of the human body's structure. This wasn't random, impulsive violence. It was calculated, methodical, and deeply disturbing, hinting at a cold, detached mind. The victims were often from the marginalized fringes of society, making their identification difficult and their disappearance less likely to be immediately noticed, a grim advantage for the killer. The murders continued, a macabre countdown that gripped the city in its icy embrace. 12 official victims were attributed to the torso murderer, though some investigators and historians believe the true number was higher, perhaps as many as 20 or more, lost to the anonymity of the era. Each new discovery chipped away further at the city's morale, leaving behind a trail of terror and unanswered questions that festered in the public consciousness. The pressure on Ness and his department was immense, a crushing weight of public expectation and media scrutiny. The public demanded answers, demanded justice, but there were none to give. Then, as abruptly and mysteriously as they began, the murders stopped. The last official victim was found in August 1938. The killer simply vanished, disappearing back into the shadows from which he emerged, leaving behind only the horrifying legacy of his crimes. Was he caught and secretly institutionalized, his capture kept quiet to avoid panic or to protect sensitive information? Did he die, perhaps in an accident or from an illness, taking his dark secrets to the grave? Did he simply move on to another city, another hunting ground, leaving Cleveland to grapple with its trauma and its profound lack of closure? No one knew. The questions hung heavy in the air, unanswered, unresolved. The Cleveland torso murderer remains one of America's most enduring and chilling unsolved mysteries. The case left an indelible scar on the city, a chilling reminder of the fragility of safety and the depths of human depravity. It's a story that continues to haunt, not just because of its gruesome nature, but because of the profound lack of closure it offers. The monster was never unmasked, his motive never truly understood. the victims never truly avenged in a court of law. The identity of the killer, despite numerous theories and suspects, has never been definitively proven. And so, nearly a century later, we are still left with questions, echoes of a nightmare that played out on the streets of Cleveland. Who was the Cleveland torso murderer? What drove him to commit such unspeakable acts of violence and mutilation? Was he a lone wolf, or did he have an accomplice? Why did he stop? Was it an external factor, like incarceration or death? Or did he simply cease his reign of terror of his own accord, his dark urges satisfied or redirected? What does it say about a society, even one as resilient as Cleveland in the 1930s, when such a monstrous figure can operate with such impunity, leaving behind a trail of horror without ever being brought to justice? And what lingering fears, what unspoken anxieties, do such unsolved mysteries leave in the collective consciousness of a city, even decades later, a silent testament to a terror that once stalked its streets? The Kingsbury Run murders stand as a stark reminder that sometimes the darkest stories have no ending, only an enduring, chilling silence.